It's January 13, 2025, and in a little less than a week, TikTok may be banned, or it may not.
TikTok Incorporated is a United States company. ByteDance Limited is a private company. It is not owned by China.
Now see, is that right there a little contradictory to what you know or what you've been hearing? If you're a small business owner and A, you want a quick rundown of what is actually going on with this TikTok ban, and B, you want an open and honest discussion about how this could potentially affect your marketing, then keep watching this video. Let's start with part A, what is actually going on with this TikTok ban as of January 13, 2025, and y'all, these are the cliff notes, okay? I'm gonna spare you all of that nonsense and just give you the meat and potatoes, what you absolutely need to know and where we're at in the process. Now, I've divided this section into 4 parts: timeline, potential outcomes, what happens if the ban goes through, and things you should know. Timeline. March 2024, the House of Representatives passes the TikTok Ban or Sell bill. Now, this bill would restrict TikTok from operating in the United States unless its Chinese-based parent company, ByteDance, divests from the platform. April 2024, the Senate follows suit and sends this bill to President Biden, who then signs it. December 27, 2024, the Trump transition team files what they call an amicus brief with the Supreme Court, which basically just asks them to continue allowing the app to operate as is until Trump gets in office so that he can use his, quote, consummate deal-making expertise to arrange a deal that will appease both sides. This right here is pending approval from the Supreme Court. January 10, 2025, lawyers from both sides present their arguments to the Supreme Court. You remember those clips that I used at the very beginning of this video? Those were actual clips from a 9-minute press conference that TikTok's lawyers held on January 10th after both teams were able to go before the Supreme Court and argue their cases. If you want to watch the full 9-minute video, which I highly encourage you to do because I think it does give a lot of background information on what TikTok is taking to the Supreme Court and what their stance is, then I'm going to go ahead and link that video down below, so feel free to go watch that. But let's talk about the potential outcomes. There are a total of 4 of them. Outcome number 1, the Supreme Court could come back and basically block that January 19, 2025 deadline that they gave TikTok. So they could just say, hey, we're not going to require you to do anything before the 19th of January, and you guys can just continue for the time being operating as is in the United States. Outcome number 2, the Supreme Court could uphold that January 19, 2025 deadline, and if TikTok doesn't do anything, then the app will get banned. Outcome number 3, that brief that President Trump submitted could get approved by the Supreme Court, and essentially that would buy TikTok a little more time, and perhaps, more than likely, we would end up with some type of resolution to this whole thing in 2025. Now, granted, there would need to be some type of negotiation somewhere in there, but it could be resolved. Outcome number 4, President Trump's brief can not be approved by the Supreme Court, and essentially we go back to outcome number 1 or outcome number 2, which just goes back to the Supreme Court deciding what they want to do and whether or not they're going to be sticklers about that January 19, 2025 deadline. And actually, hold up, because there could be a 5th potential outcome, and that outcome could simply be that the Supreme Court comes back and rules in favor of TikTok. And so then TikTok could continue to operate as is. But let's say that none of this gets resolved and the TikTok ban goes through. What exactly does that mean? Okay, so what does that mean for you if you have the app downloaded on your phone right now? The app will actually continue to work as is. Now, where the problem comes in is that if it does get banned, then obviously it's not going to be available on Google Play Store or in the Apple Store anymore, and that also means that you won't be able to update it. Any updates that TikTok may be planning on releasing in 2025, 2026, it won't be available to you. Essentially, the app would over time become obsolete because, as we all know, if you don't update these platforms or these apps, over time bugs will start to come up and you'll have issues with the app operating on its own. And then on top of it, it's likely going to be a little more susceptible to security risk. So that in itself could take probably a couple of weeks, a couple months. The app will continue to work and it'll be fine until you start to experience these issues with it, and then you're not able to download the most recent version. So what does it mean though for somebody who does not have the app downloaded on their phone as of January 19, 2025, if this ban were to take place? It means that they're just not going to be able to download the app. So if you do want TikTok, go ahead and download it now, I guess, for a couple days, and then you'll still be able to access it after the ban, if the ban does take place. Just remember that you won't be privy to any updates down the road, and eventually you'll start to see kinks in that app, and one day it will become obsolete. Things that I think you should know, because there are some important factors that are just kind of getting left out or not even talked about, but I do think that they are important to the conversation. So the first thing to keep in mind is the beef that the Supreme Court has with TikTok right now has everything to do with this corporate structure right here. And while the conversation right now appears to just be on TikTok, there are other apps that could also be affected because the ByteDance company also happens to own CapCut, Lemon8, and HiPic. And while two of those apps are editing apps, Lemon8 is a social media platform, okay? It may not be one that you recognize or that you're using, but it was one that launched back in, I think, either 2023 or 2024. And so if there's an issue with TikTok, then obviously there's going to be an issue with Lemon8. It would also be nice for them to give us some guidance on what would potentially happen with CapCut, because that is an editing software that a lot of content creators and small business owners use on the daily to create reels, even on Instagram, or to help them with editing YouTube shorts or videos. Another thing that needs to be noted is that the number of Americans that use TikTok is pretty substantial, okay? So the figure that they've thrown out there is that 170 million Americans use the app, meaning half of the United States has TikTok downloaded on their phone. So for whatever that's worth, I think that's an important figure that we all need to know. I believe that in preparation for what was going on with the Supreme Court and how they were potentially going to be banned, TikTok went out and actually had a study done on how much money they brought into the United States. And so the next number that I think is really important here too, supposedly this study found that TikTok contributed $24.2 billion to the US gross domestic product. What's interesting here is that while that seems like a lot, and I'm sure TikTok thought this would be a great thing to present to the US Supreme Court, that actually only translates to less than 1% of the overall GDP for last year. So not quite sure if that's going to translate into being a big, bold statement about their monetary contribution to the US like they thought it would. And the last thing that I want to bring up is that per the 44-page emergency injunction that TikTok filed, the public interest in avoiding hasty judicial review is particularly strong here because the act will take effect just one day prior to the inauguration of a new president. Take it for what it is. The deadline that TikTok was given to make these changes or to be banned actually takes place January 19, 2025, which happens to be the day before President Trump is going to be inaugurated. So when they filed this emergency injunction, their thing is basically like, hey, can you not wait just one more day so that we can have a new administration to work with to figure all of this out? So now let's talk about part B, which is how this is going to affect your marketing as a small business owner, depending on what goes down. I'm not going to speculate because, at this point, well, okay, I will speculate. I'll let you know what I actually think is going to happen at the end of this video. Because first, I actually want to address why this is such an important reminder. All right, this is playing out in real time for us as small business owners. First and foremost, I am a professional marketeer. So that's what I went to school for. That's what I have over 15 years of experience in. However, back in 2017, I started my own small business. So I am also a small business owner. Having that background in marketing, I can tell you that the way we treat social media as small business owners is very bizarre. Okay, no other medium has been able to create this weird toxic relationship with small businesses. I think it stems from the idea that social media is free, which I'm going to argue that it takes up time and resources, and your time and resources as a small business are not free. There is a cost to that. And so you should be treating social media just like you treat every other marketing initiative, like you treat billboards, just like you treat print ads. There is a cost associated with all of this. Where it gets sticky is that as a small business owner who is starting out, or as a small business owner who doesn't have deep pockets, who has a limited marketing budget, you may decide that using platforms like TikTok and Instagram and Facebook are the only way for you to really gain a large audience, raise awareness for your small business in a cost-effective manner, right? So meaning you don't have to dish out a bunch of money in order to get eyeballs on your products or services or to gain recognition. But here's the thing. If you are relying solely on these platforms and you are not building a robust marketing plan that allows you to reach your audience in other ways, when something like this happens, when TikTok gets banned, and that is the only way that you are selling your products and services, you are allowing your business to take on a lot of risk. Because the second that platform shuts down, then you are left with having to start all over on a different platform, or you're left with no business because now you have no sales coming in. This is not a lecture, but the reason I want to remind you of this is because it is basically like handing over the keys to your kingdom. Your business is your kingdom, and you are basically giving these platforms the keys to your business if you are not diversifying your marketing. Are you building an email list so that if TikTok goes away, you're able to still communicate through people's inbox with customers or potential customers? Do you have a website that you control? Okay, that you could go in and update, and where people can go and find your products, your services, and are able to purchase through that website? Are you giving other marketing platforms a chance? I don't even like using the word traditional advertising because I think traditional has changed in 2025 now, but are you looking at local publications? Would it do you any good to take out a digital ad in your local community magazine? Would it benefit you to look at potentially sending out postcards where you could specifically target communities and neighborhoods, zip codes, household income, education levels? If you have a physical storefront, have you considered digital billboards? These are all options that are available to you outside of just social media, outside of TikTok and Instagram and Facebook. And so as a marketing professional, I just want to remind you that there is so much more available to you in terms of being able to promote your small business than just showing up on Instagram. Use this right here, what is playing out in front of us with TikTok, as a reminder to you that it's not a smart idea to only use these platforms and not think about building a robust marketing plan around it. You need to have other ways that you can communicate to potential customers and to draw people in, to give them other avenues for purchasing your products and services outside of just social media. Now, what do I personally think is going to happen? I think that regardless of whether or not TikTok gets banned on January 19, 2025, I believe that President Trump and his administration are likely going to do something to address the ban or to reverse it. It was something that was talked about during his political campaign, and I feel his administration is going to make it a point to loop back around and to ensure that they are delivering on whatever promise they had talked about throughout the campaign trail. Now, that's not to say that ultimately a resolution will be made. That's to be determined, but I do think that regardless of what happens on January 19th, the day before his administration comes in, I think that on January 20th, they're probably going to do something to get it back on the table. If you're looking to grow your business in 2025 and ultimately you want to build a more robust marketing plan to help you grow your business, then I highly recommend that you watch this next video right here where I talk about the difference between marketing and advertising, because y'all, as small business owners, it is so important to understand the difference. If you use those two words interchangeably and if you do not know the difference between marketing and advertising, you can be missing out on some really great opportunities. So go ahead and watch this next video right here.